My name is Teresa Collett. I'm a law professor in Minneapolis, as the chairwoman mentioned. I also, however, have a fairly robust litigation practice.
Madam Chair, she may need to pull her mic a little bit closer to her.
Thank you. I also have a fairly robust litigation practice and have represented numerous public officials in amicus briefs before the U.S. Supreme Court, federal courts of appeals, and state Supreme Courts. I've also had the privilege of serving as Special Attorney General or Special Counsel to the states of Oklahoma, New Hampshire, and also in Kansas. That is the basis of my testimony today, which represents my personal views, not the views of my employer, the University of St. Thomas. It is important to note what is absent from this bill at the outset. Number one, while the bill recognizes that abortion is constitutionally protected, it fails to recognize the unique nature of abortion. Abortion, unlike the other procedures that are listed as comparable procedures in the legislation, in the words of the Eighth Circuit, ends the separate, unique human life. There is no other medical procedure that is undertaken in this country where that is permitted. It is also important to note that many of the premises of this bill are simply false. The first congressional finding in the bill suggests that abortion access is a necessary precondition to women's full participation in the economic and social life of this country. To that extent, it is a version of what the Supreme Court plurality said in Planned Parenthood versus Casey. But when that case was decided, abortion rates were already beginning their steep decline. The simple fact is that from 1991 to 2016, the last year in which we have statistics from the CDC regarding the rate of abortion, abortions have declined more than 50%, going from an annual rate of 24 per thousand women to 11.6. During that time period, women's participation in the workforce has remained largely steady, including participation by women who have children under the age of 18. During that time also, women's educational achievement has skyrocketed. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, women's college degrees have quadrupled from 1970 to 2018. In addition to that, women-owned businesses have increased 42%, according to the American Express study in 2019 of women's businesses. They contribute $1.9 trillion to the national economy. The simple fact is there is no correlation between access to abortion and women's participation in the economic and social life of this country. To the extent that there is a correlation, it appears to be a negative correlation, but I won't insult the members of this committee by suggesting that's a truth. We all know that correlation and causation are very different things. But women are succeeding in this society while abortion rates are falling rapidly. There is no correlation. My second point is that the restructuring of the abortion market is in response to that steep decline. While it is said many times already today that abortion access is a necessary component of health care, the committee ignores in this legislation the fact that 54% of all counties in this country have no hospitals providing obstetric services. Dr. Robinson testified to that fact today and said in Alabama it's an even greater number of hospitals that provide no obstetric services. That is an outrage. If you were really concerned about women's health, that would be your primary concern. In addition to that, we also see that there is a restructuring by the major market force in that industry. The industry, of course, is led by Planned Parenthood, who has adopted as a strategy the building of mega clinics. When markets are declining, you need economies of scale. That makes sense to me. In the state of Texas, they have built a mega clinic that in 2014 expanded their ability to serve women by 1,000. But when Walmart comes to town, you expect smaller businesses to close. The fact that these clinics are closing that compete with Planned Parenthood is much more a product of market forces than it is by any regulation. And in fact, researchers at Guttmacher have said that they cannot explain with certainty what's causing the decline or what the impact of these regulations are on that decline. It's also important, finally, to note that this legislation is based on studies that are predominantly done by the abortion industry itself. It would be comparable to trying to pass tobacco regulation based on the Tobacco Research Institute, an institute that was funded by the industry and that suppressed studies that were contrary to its economic interest and its economic desires. That is true in this area as well. Again, if this committee were interested in women's health truly, they would be passing legislation that would require all states to report to the CDC the rate of abortions, the injuries from abortions, the age and gestational age of the child. They would also require and fund studies done by independent researchers. Thank you, Madam Chair.